You know, Gene, I think I might like to take you down to Douglas County and show you where my family lives.
That was probably in May, and I bucked it all the way until probably the 1st of June before we ever went.
And
I thought that was committing a little more than I wanted to commit.
Because it would have been staying overnight somewhere else with them.
Yeah, and going down to meet relatives is...
Who met relatives first? He met your dad or you met his?
He met.
And was your dad impressed or?
I guess he must have been.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was your first impression of the Weatherly Ranch? What a dump, or wow, this is really pretty.
Oh, it was an old house, and that, wasn't, they were definitely older type. Dorothy wasn't old. She was only a few years older than Bill, actually. But it was not my style of living, at least. She was teaching school by then, though, so,
Right. Teaching school.
In Elton.
Who would have been living in that house at that point?
In
that old farmhouse.
They did.
Dorothy and Dick.
And 3 kids.
Oh, okay. 3 kids.
Bess, Marge, and Howie.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so he showed you the sights, took you down to the river, showed you the sheep or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Cows, sheep.
Yeah.
Very proud of it.
Yeah.
Spent every year down there from the time he was 9 until he went to college. And then he stalled going to college for 1 year. Thought he was getting out of it until his mother remembered and proceeded to tell his dad he promised her faithfully that if she let him stay 1 year after high school, that he would see to it that he went to college.
So he spent an entire year, not just a summer, but an entire year before going to college.
And then his dad called one day, probably about the 1st of September, and said, "What have you done about going to school?" And he said nothing. He said, "Get your butt out there because you're going." And so he took Wade with him, and they went out.
He grabbed Wade with him?
Yeah. Wade ended up going also. He went to school for 1 or 2 years is all.
How long did Great-Grandpa Weatherly and Edith remain in Portland before they moved back to the country?
Till a year after we did.
Oh.
We took the grandchild away from him and moved down there, so
I see.
Followed us down to be close to the grandchild.
So did that mean that Mary Ann had to finish going to high school in Elkton?
No, she was through school.
Oh, she was.
Yeah. Mary Ann is considerably younger than I. I don't remember how much. Oh, not considerably, but...
That's why I thought she may have only been a teenager in the early 40s.
No, let's see, when I had Sharon, she was a senior in high school.
Okay.
And so, and that was only, probably not over 6 years, if that, 5 or 6 years.
Okay. Did he say, this might be where I want to live later?
No.
No. He kept that a secret for a while.
Well, I don't think he ever thought he would be.
Oh.
But then when Dick got sick, and they thought that's what his degree was in, and he had hopes of coming up. We went and looked at some ranches one time when we were down after he got out of the service.
Other ranches? Huh.
The one at the bottom of the hill just before you go up the hill to come back down into Elton. That one that has a kind of a colonial house. Looked at it.
The one right like that little valley right before you go up Hancock Hill? Really? Wow, that'd been a fun place maybe.
Yeah, but
pretty.
They decided they didn't want to sell it after all. But Wade's dad took us there.
What did you think of Elkton?
It was just a small town,
Yeah.
you know, in those days. The whole thing didn't really appeal to me.
You,
No,
yeah.
I was a city girl.
Right, and everything.
And such, but
Because it was hunting and fishing and trapping and all kinds of...
But I existed for 58 years. Can you imagine? 58 years down there.
58 years down there.
And she just shakes her head.
What do you miss the most? I mean, aside from the things that were hard and difficult and you didn't really love about living down there, what season did you like the most on the farm?
Oh, probably summer.
Summer?
Yeah, because my kids were home and I had company and entertained their kids and
fresh vegetables out of the garden and the sprinklers going and evenings are really nice down there in the summertime. And out on the porch.
But I think it was probably just having company and I entertained lots because I needed the people around me.
I see.
And that's what I try to get, although this isn't for that, but your mom, you know, kept indicating that Linda was going to be gone. What was I going to do, you know? I mean, I was just going to be lost without Linda. And I said, who do you think I live with here? I have loads of friends, you know. There are people around me all the time. I'm not going to be lonesome without Linda here. And I was telling Linda, she said, well, I came over one time last week. And that was true. I mean, she's not here all the time. She does do a lot for me.
Yeah.
And she does all my shopping and that sort of thing. I couldn't live here without her, actually, but it's not that she comes over all the time.
Needing to be around people was, and when Linda left the house, is that when you really wanted to felt like you really wanted to go to work in Elkton and be a secretary there?
I did that her last year,
really?
senior year. And Grandpa Bill wasn't happy over that. He was ornery and all get out that one year.
Just out of pride that my wife's not working, kind of a thing?
I guess. And he said afterwards it was just loneliness before.
Because he would be at home all day by himself.
And he didn't like that.
But most of the time he's out doing his own thing anyway, so it's not like you were spending time together.
And then when the end of the year, I fell apart and had 2 operations, and we had never had any insurance. And all of a sudden here, everything was being paid for. We never was billed a thing, I don't think, for the 2 operations. And by the following February, he had a back operation. And he soon decided that it was a good thing.
I see.
And then when we retired and I had money, also that went well.
Yeah.
But you know, you don't see things like that when you're just thinking about it. But no, he wasn't happy a bit. But once the 1 year was over and Linda left home, everything went smoothly. Then he would come up for everything at school and would always ride the school bus up. Wouldn't even drive up because I had the car up there. And so he'd go out and flag down the school bus going back. I mean, it was always somebody he knew real well.
Why would he go up just to visit you for lunch or something?
No, he would go up for ball games and anything that I had to take money at and such. He didn't come every day or anything, but anything that I was required to be there for, he jumped the bus and up he came.
I see.
But then toward the end, he took the pickup up almost every day and had coffee up there, just something to do.
So you started working at Elkton High School in 1967?
No, 66.
66.
All of 66. So Linda graduated in June of 67.
Okay, yeah, 66, 67 school year.
Yeah. He wanted me to retire the year before that. And he wanted me to go hunting with him over in eastern Oregon. And, said, and my bosses both said, if you let her stay, I'll promise you can have her go hunting with you every year. So I did go hunting that year, but then I ended up, but I was 66, which was beyond retirement anyway, when I retired.
Oh, I see. I see.
On the 65 year, and I was born in
What was the year you quit?
66.
Started in
67.
66. You started it up in
66.
66. What year did you retire? 90?
No, I retired.
89? Was Casey going to school?
Yep.
So you got through Casey's years.
Yep.
Was Corey going to school?
No. Well, not high school.
Oh.
So it would have been,
Casey graduated in 90.
it would have been probably 88, 87.
Okay.
It says something.
So you worked there 20 years or 21
21.
years? Well, 21, then that's 1988.
Okay. My retirement says that, but I don't ever remember it.
Yeah. How long did it take you to adjust to a life of being so attached to the outdoors with the fishing and the hunting and the camping trips and stuff like that? I mean, did you enjoy that stuff right from the start, or did it take a while before you liked doing that?
I think that was all right as long as it was something to do. That was my main thing. I needed things to do. I didn't like
sitting in the trailer waiting all day for them to come home so you can clean the fish.
And if we were out with, in a campground, that would be fine because I could see people and
right.
that sort of thing.
The things that you would have had, I would imagine you would have had to learn almost a new set of skills for living in the country that you may not have even learned in the city. Things like how to butcher and freeze a deer, or can vegetables, or...
Well, I never had to do any of the animal stuff. He did all that. I had to package it and freeze it and that sort of thing. But the vegetables and that sort of thing, yes, I'd never canned in my life.
Made jam and all kinds of stuff like that. Did you teach yourself how to do that, or was there someone that...
No. Well, his mother knew, but no, maybe she did help. I don't remember that.
Right.
I probably helped her. Well, she was down there. She wasn't down there my first year. And I remember Norman brought me a big box of pears, and we put them in the kitchen that summer that I went down there. And then he took me to Reedsport just because he was going. Bill always said, if you're going anywhere, just take off. Don't stop. She'll go with you if you're going to Alaska. And so...
No, wait a minute. Say that again. I'm not quite sure I understood what you meant by that.
Well, he would stop, and if he was going to Reedsport, and say, do you want to go? And
Norman would do that?
Yeah, and I would always go because he was a goer. And so Bill said, when you decide to go to Alaska or somewhere, don't stop because she'll go with you. And said, but anyway, we went to Reedsport. He brought this big box of pears and put them on the floor in the kitchen. And we went to Reedsport. And when we came back, the cows had been in eating a whole bunch of the pears.
They actually nosed into your kitchen. Wow.
Yeah,
Have they dropped piles in the house?
No, they hadn't. It's amazing they hadn't.
Huh.
My dad got a real kick out of that. He could see that being raised on a farm. My mother couldn't ever see it. She was a city girl through and through.
Yeah. Were there some aspects of farm life that you really grew to enjoy, whether it was...
Oh, it was a wonderful place to raise kids, actually.
Just because you knew they were safe and...
Yeah, well, and they walked to the river and swam every afternoon. I was alone all afternoon every during the summer they would go down there, and there were lots of activities, kids coming home and that sort of thing.
Did you ever feel like, your kids were in some ways too isolated?
Well, I may have, but they were so happy with what they knew that it didn't bother me that much, but it would have if they hadn't. And Elkton was a pretty active high school at the time. And they had very good friends in it. If they hadn't had real good friends in each of their classes. Now, Sharon probably didn't have as good a class as the other two, but of course Larry stepped in there from the very beginning, and she didn't need anybody else. And we, the Byers kids came down and stayed with us a lot, and the Hutchinson kids, the doctor's kids, came all the time. I always had Phyllis and Peg came because their mother died, and Phyllis didn't come as much as Peg loved it, so she came always. But so, there were always other kids there, and I don't think they ever felt like they were deprived either. But I liked kids, and so it didn't bother me at all to have them.
How worried were you ever about, potential dangers on the farm, whether it was, if your kids are out running around the farm all day or down at the river, that they could run into a bear or a rattlesnake or something that might...
Rattlesnakes were about the only thing. We didn't have bears and that sort of thing down on the farm at that time. They've gotten more friendly.
Or big cats even?
No. Never thought of those. Rattlesnakes, yes. But they were taught from the very beginning what one looked like.
How to handle it, yeah.
Carrie was probably, he wasn't very old. Definitely still in grade school, and they had him watering a bridge that they put up the creek there that went out in the big flood, and so they poured cement and they wanted him to water it and keep it that way. And so he went up one day and the crew was there, two men were there, and so they were playing with this snake and fooling around, and finally Carrie said, "Did you know that's a rattler?" And he was just a little kid, and they laughed him, at it. And
they picked it up.
I don't know what they did do with it, but anyway, he was correct. It was a rattler, but they were sure didn't know what he was talking about.
But didn't try and bite him.
No. Yeah, well, but Bill had taught them when they were young, what to expect. And so I never really worried about them as far as snakes went, but they knew they were there. And I was worse than they were because I didn't know what they were, and so I'd come close to stepping on one before I'd come to. And